Well, hello! Back again with another video, and I decided, since I'm home alone right now, why not do this little tag I created a couple days ago, or I think it was a week, called the Reader Experience tag. So basically, this is just kind of asking, like, what's your overall experience as a reader? And I also try to look to see if there was any other tags like this on here, and luckily there isn't. There's just, like, the reader problem stuff, but anyways, just asking the overall experience as a reader. And also, I'm going to be tagging a lot of smaller, lesser-known booktubers in the description down below that I have been subscribing to recently, and I've also been interacting with recently, so yeah. I will leave all the links in the channels to the descriptions down below. Question 1. What is your overall experience reading a book slash comic slash graphic novel slash manga? Well, kind of depends on both mediums. For a book, I'll try to imagine like what the characters look like. For example, I'll picture like real life classmates in the book as some characters. I'll picture like actors or people that I kind of know as like these characters. Like for example, Dylan Authors who played, sorry for that, Jimmy in Falling Skies. I imagine him as John McCleaver because personally, I think that him back then, how he looked back then, would totally fit the character of John Cleaver, except like he probably would have had to like dye his hair a little bit darker because in the books, John's hair is described as being like jet black, but Dylan's hair is like kind of like mine right here, like kind of dark brown, but not like super black. But yeah, or like also imagine like what their cars look like, what the neighborhoods look like, the mood and the atmosphere, the tone of the book. For comics and graphic novels and manga, I'll just imagine what the voices sound like. Sometimes, like in the Walking Dead comic, I imagine so many of the characters having like haggard, redneck-esque voices. Like a portion of it does take place in the South, so that kind of relates to it. But for me, I guess I've just been around like people throughout my entire life who've had things like redneck-esque, haggard voices. So I kind of just like projected that onto the characters, even though some of them probably wouldn't sound like that. But anyways, yeah. Question 2. What can you do while reading? Not much. Like, I can eat and drink listening and reading. Sorry for listening. For listening to music, I can't. Like, if it was something like, It's Time, Imagine Dragons, or Wake Up Me Up with September Ends by Green Day, or another, like, song that's just, like, a bop. Oh, Selfish by Asia Cruz. That one I love, too. I would just be, like, bopping my head out to that shit, and I would just not pay attention to the book, and I want to like focus on the book and read it, but not listen to music. Like I can listen to music while like drawing a little bit, but not like much listening to music while reading. Question 3. What is your overall reading taste? I would say it's like very broad. I see the potential in every story to be good, bad, or in between. So, I could see this one book and it's like, well, that doesn't sound too interesting, but I could potentially love it. Or that sounds really interesting, but I'm not sure if I'm going to love it. And I just usually let the book or show or comic or music just judge itself to me and I let it tell itself to me and then I kind of judge off how I feel, I base my feelings off how I feel, what the story makes me feel like, what does it make me feel overall, kind of like that. So yeah, that's kind of what my overall reading taste is. Like I'll pretty much read anything from fantasy to sci-fi to horror to crime thrillers to mysteries to any genre. Romance is my least kind of least like reached one. I probably will read some, but currently I don't read like too many romance novels. But mostly I will read and watch pretty much anything. So yeah. Question 4. What small things can add to a book for you? Well, maybe like the way the prose is written, maybe the way it's formatted. Like, for example, World War Z by Max Brooks. Some people didn't necessarily like the format of it, but I liked how it was presented as a non-fiction novel when it is actually a fiction novel. That was a really interesting way to tell that story. Or like little things, like for example, in The Skies Everywhere by Janie Nelson, where there was like poetry like littered throughout the book of the main character's poetry that she just kind of tossed and someone's reading it and you don't really know until the end, which I won't spoil. But that was a pretty decent book overall. I like the way it was formatted like that. Or the comics, obviously great, stunning, amazing art. Or sometimes, like, if you go to Webtoons, they'll play, like, soundtracks over it. Like, I read a little bit of Dents by this girl who was on, like, that sitcom, Two Broke Girls that my sister watched. I don't care for it. I heard the humor was kind of fucked up, so there's that. But it was a pretty decent webcomic, and I love me a good dystopian story. Question 5. What is one odd habit you do before, during, or after reading a book? Well, one habit I do is, for, like, books with chapters, I will try to read at least 10 chapters per day. If it's, like, no chapters, then I'll just read as much as I can, like, at least a big chunk of the novel. And also, I'll even, like, kind of, like, skip through, read, count how many chapters, like, there is, like, not actually read the content side, but count how many chapters and determine when will I be able to finish that book. Like, for example, I will say, like, I'll read a book, and I count, and if there's like 50 chapters, I'm like, oh, I can get this done in 5 days. Well, sometimes I can be a little inaccurate with that. Like, for example, I read Winger by Andrew Smith a while back, and I thought I was gonna finish this in 4 days. I ended up binging that book in like 2 days because it was that addictive. I really want to read more Andrew Smith because that book was really good. I can see why some people had some problems with the ending, like Maxwell from Well Done Books. He had a little bit of a problem with the ending. I'm not going to get into why, but I can kind of see now, as a queer man, how he can have problems with that, so yeah. Question 6. What do you consider unique about your reading experience? Probably because I am autistic and that I guess I experience things at a higher level. Like a friend told me that I would like people like me experience things like that high level. And I guess somewhat I do because sometimes I'll be like super attuned to stuff that no one else does. Or sometimes I'll be like super obsessed with names. Like this paper I have here has like all these names. So there's that. I have like this gigantic name folder right here that I've been like doing this type of stuff since like 2012 because I have this fascination. Sometimes I'll even like pay attention to the way an author names their characters. And I'm like, yep, that's totally a name that character or author would come up with. Like, for example, Dan Wells, I'll notice that he'll have a specific way of naming his characters, or Lee Bardugo or someone else like that, where they have like a very specific way of naming their characters. I also tend to sometimes look up names from like stories and see if they're real. Like, for example, I'll go on my phone or I'll go onto Facebook or Ancestry and look up, like, they're actually pretty reliable ways of looking up names, by the way, because, you know, they'll lead to more concrete answers. And also pen like a date, so I know when to like put the name and the birth date when that character was born, because I like to be super realistic, for example. So there's that. Question 7. Who would you want to read a book with? Depends, you know. Michelle at Thor Wants Another Letter mentioned that she likes to do buddy reads, and I would definitely like to do a buddy read with her sometimes, specifically around an Indigenous book. Once I can get one, and I can ask her, hey, like, there's this book that's kind of like a native book, and I want to read with you, because she is Oglala Lakota herself, or maybe Brody at Etu Brody. They seem like pretty cool to read with as well. Bowties and Books, they're pretty interesting YouTubers. Well, I have mentioned them a couple videos back. So yeah, there's that. A bonus question I added is, your favorite subgenres? Well, my all-time favorite's post-apocalyptic for sure, because The Walking Dead got me started on that genre, and I've loved that genre since, because you can come up with so many ways the world can end. Like, there's zombies, aliens, virus, dystopian genre itself's kind of post-apocalyptic. Sorry, I'm kind of scratching my leg. Or, like, fantasy or other stuff. I have, like, million story ideas. Like, I have some of my docs where I've come up with, like, multiple, like, species and like monsters like vampires or zombies, because I also read this comic Boston Max book called The Extinction Parade, and while I wasn't a huge fan of the comic, I did like it featured like vampires in the zombie apocalypse, and you don't really see that idea too often, so I was like, hey, you know, I'll do that idea as well. Also, tag people, which I will in the description, and I kind of want to start this little tradition, since I'm obsessed with names, of my name of the week, where I'll name off one of my papers, and if you have that name, I can definitely give you a shout out. I can give you bonus points if you are a specific thing I've attached to this name. But if you have that name anywhere, I'll still shout you out and give you love and heart your comments. So yeah. The name I want to shout out today is Catherine Shot with Two Arrow, specifically Catherine of Native American descent. If you're watching this and your name is Catherine Shot with Two Arrow, you get a shout out. So yeah, like I said, I hopefully can continue this tradition in other videos, and I'm going to be tagging a lot of my other people in the description down below. See you with another video. See you later.